Hi, I'm Bob Crimmins. I'm the founder of Startup Haven, and I'm going to share with you why poker is such an important part of what we do at Startup Haven, what I do as a mentor and advisor and an investor, and why I think every founder
Hi everyone. Is
should
this thing on?
play poker. I'll start by sharing a little bit about what Startup Haven is. So Startup Haven is an organization. It's been around for 19 years now. I started it back in 2006. I was a founder myself, and I wanted to learn how to play cards. And I started asking people I knew if they wanted to get together and learn how to play. As it turns out, as a founder myself, the vast majority of the people in my world were other founders and investors. And so as I was having meetings, I would just ask whoever I was talking to if they were interested in getting together once in a while and learning how to play cards. And so that turned into the first night, and we had 7 people. And we sat around the table. We had dinner first. We met at someone's house, one of the investors, and had a nice nice little dinner, and then we sat down at the card table. We all put 20 bucks in the middle, and we tried to learn how to play cards. No one there had any experience playing, in this case, No Limit Hold'em. And so we played that night, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a little, but I really enjoyed spending time with the people who were there. I knew some of them pretty well. Others of them I was just getting to know, and happened to have a meeting with them, and they were willing to come out and play, so they joined us. That carried on for some months, and it was a terrific experience. I certainly learned how to play poker, at least the fundamentals, how to bet, how to hold your cards, and so forth. And what I wasn't expecting was that the people around the table would connect in the way that they did. I'd never played in a regular poker game, so if you've played in a regular poker game, you probably know the sort of bonding the relationships that you build, just the camaraderie that comes out of playing a game. And you play the game for a couple hours at a time, a few hours at a time. And I liked that so much that even though I'd sort of learned how to play cards, I wasn't looking for a regular game. I just want to learn how to play. But I decided that part of it, call it networking, although this is unlike any other networking I'd ever done. I thought that was worth keeping going. So I moved it to my office. Our startup had an office downtown, and we had plenty of room for a couple tables. And we started every month, the list grew. I invited more people. Other people who were attending were inviting their colleagues, and it grew and grew and grew. And it sort of took on a life of its own. We went from 1 table to 2 tables to 3 tables to 4 tables to 5 tables over just a few months. We outgrew my office and had to move down to the big conference room in the building that we had our startup in. And the sort of joy of bringing those people together, seeing those relationships happen, just continued to grow. So I just kept it going, and it was a passion project of mine now for 19 years. And at a point, it grew too fast. I think we ended up with too many people who were awesome people, super fun to play cards with, but they weren't founders or investors, and it kind of messed with the vibe a little bit. And then the service providers, lawyers, and bankers, and the rest, they all found out about it. They all got invited by other people, and it got to the point where we were at capacity every night. And you can really only get through a night of poker with about 40 people. And so I'd have to tell founders and investors, sorry, you can't come because I won't name the service providers. This one and that one and the other one, they have seats. Half the seats were taken by service providers, and understandably, it was a honeypot, I suppose you'd say. And it got to the point where I didn't feel good about it anymore, so I cut them all off. And I said, we'll take 1 or 2, maybe 3, if you want to, buy dinner. By that time, a local VC had already started helping out with the cost of the food and beverage, and a local law firm had started to help out, just spontaneously stepping up. So I said, if a few of you want to do that, that's fine. But we're not going to be the NASCAR of startup events and have 20 sponsors there. And at that point, then it got back to the original sort of, to me, exciting part to see founders and investors sitting around a table, getting to know each other, and that experience, is hard to explain. I think we've all had, and if you're a founder investor, you've had this experience. You sit around a table, and it's all founders investors who are with you. The conversation is different than in any other context that I know of, and certainly that I knew of at the time. And the kinds of things that get talked about, the kinds of relationships that get built, were just fundamentally different. And in order to do that, to keep it so that it didn't devolve, if you will, again, we instituted an application process. So everybody had to get vetted, and over time, the group grew back to the full strength, and it was terrific. Then a founder in Seattle who was starting a company now in Portland wondered if we wondered together if this would work down there too. So we did it, and it worked. And then San Diego, and then San Francisco, and Silicon Valley, and LA, and we did all that just for fun. It was 10 or 15% of my time, and just super rewarding. Never made a profit, but I was happy to do it. And then COVID came, and COVID stopped it all. And COVID's over now, and we're starting to build back. And it's got me rethinking how poker has influenced the way I think about startups, the way I help startups, and the way I invest in startups. There are no limits to the number of blog posts you can go find, people talking about how poker and startups are the same in this way and that way, and how there's lessons to be learned and strategies and so forth. And certainly there are lots and lots and lots of those, and I saw them too. It took a while for me, though, and as a mentor and advisor at the time, as a founder, certainly for most of that period. And if you're in this business long enough, you start to see patterns, and that's why mentors, advisors and good investors are so valuable, because they've seen so much, and they can see that happens a lot in this way. And so if they work with a startup founder, they can share that perspective of having seen this so many times. So they see those patterns. And I think, after mentoring so actively for so long, about a dozen years or so, probably 300 companies, founders through all those years. And I started thinking that I saw principles, not just the patterns and sort of the predictive ways in which you can look at a problem and say, oh no, if you try to do that, this is probably what's going to go wrong. But rather the principles that were underlying that problem that any given startup was having. And there was a commonality between it. And I noticed that poker had the same dynamic at play. And it really comes down to two things: uncertainty and time. Time less so at the poker table, for sure, a little bit, but in a different way. But the uncertainty of the decisions that you have to make as a poker player, your entire time at the table is making uncertain decisions in an environment of limited information. And as a founder, you get up every single day and you make probabilistic decisions in environments of uncertainty and, super importantly, limited time. So that, over time, led me to think about how I help startups as a mentor and advisor at the time. And over the last 10 years, I started noticing that whenever I would work with a startup founder, it ended up going pretty much the same way. And I noticed that I was doing the same sort of analysis, if you will, thinking about the founder and the things they were trying to accomplish and the problems they were having. I kept seeing it as, wow, that's really uncertain. How could you reduce that uncertainty and make sure that you're going to end up somewhere in the amount of time that you have, which is very limited, in a place where you can go on to the next level. So that led to me creating a framework, if you will. Sounds a little highfalutin to call it framework, but I will. That thinks about decision making for founders in a way that is highly analogous to decision making in poker, with the added difficulty of a very short amount of time. And that's the biggest difference between poker and startups. Is in startups it's even harder because you have to make uncertain decisions in an environment of very limited information, but you also have to do it while there's a clock running. And if you don't end up in the place that you need to end up with at the end of your resources, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So the notion that poker could somehow teach you or help you get better at this special kind of critical thinking became an obsession of mine. And the ways in which I worked with founders, for my own self, I felt it getting more and more, I'll say, sophisticated. I was like, oh, I've had this kind of conversation before, and I can see now that there's a way for me to ask questions of a founder to get to the point where I think I can help them, or at least I know who to introduce them to, who can help them more than I can. And then I suddenly thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great if more founders played poker? And why not? And so after having done this now for 19 years, Startup Haven has now hosted much more than 450, 460, something like that, live, in-person, dinner and poker for founders and investors only. And the results of all of that is that my mission, part of my mission, is to share that with founders, partly because I think it's just so fundamental to the way startups work and the things that you can do to improve the probability of your success, that I wanted more and more founders to do that. I just thought it was so valuable. Not only is it you're doing this kind of critical thinking, but you're also sitting at a table with 6 or 7 or 8 other founders and investors for 2 or 3 hours, trash talking, getting to know them, having these inflection points where there's a big pot or a bad beat where someone surprisingly with a big hand ends up getting beat on the end. All of those things create an environment where real relationships happen. Poker is boring, and that's good. That means while you're sitting around the table, if you're playing right, you should be folding 80% of the time. And that means you have a lot of time in between hands to talk to who's next to you or to have conversations and whatnot. And then there's these inflection points that happen. And I wish, I only have one recording of this happening, but it happens at every single event, 450 plus times. Every half an hour, one table or another will erupt. And there they are, founders, investors, standing up, hooting and hollering, high five, oh my God, they can't believe. It's such a, to sound a little corny, it's such a bonding moment because everybody was part of that moment, and they all recognized that moment, and it makes everybody happy, and except for the person maybe who got beat, but it just creates this bond that I have never seen in any other startup event I've ever been to, and even when I started these poker nights, I'd already been a founder for some years and had been to dozens of networking events, and wasn't really all that keen on networking, frankly, just as a value for time perspective. But this felt like something that was actually worth the time. Because you were now going to build these relationships with founders, and it was longitudinal. It wasn't just like you go to an event, meet some people, you get some business cards, maybe you got a coffee meeting, maybe you don't. The next month you come, and half the people there were at the previous event, and the one who beat you out of that big pot is there now, and that creates another connection point. And so now, after 19 years and seeing this happen over and over and over again, I want to share why I think more founders don't play poker. And I want to try to convince at least, well, all of them, but at least some of them, to give it a try. if you haven't played poker before, first of all, understand it's an easy game to learn. It's not hard to play. 15 or 20 minutes of watching an online play like a for fun game online and watch how the cards go around and see how you bet, and you can kind of get the basics, the fundamentals of it in 20 minutes. And that's all you need to come to Poker 2.0 events. We keep them super friendly and fun and very, very low stakes. So no one has to worry about losing a bunch of money. We joke a lot about, yeah, I'll see you at Poker 2.0, I'm going to take your money, or you're going to take my money, or whatever. It's $10. Like, that's your downside for spending, time at a table with other founders and investors doing this really fun thing that is, a relationship builder on steroids. Now, the reason, why is it that people don't play poker? Well, you just may never have been exposed to it. I get that. But there is this sort of dark reputation that I think poker has for some people, that it's a vice and it's gambling and it's for criminals and degenerates, and somehow it's only for men, and men are the only ones that do it, and it's cigar smoking and cursing and cheating and drunkenness, and like none of that is part of poker. That's the people who are playing the game. Poker is a card game. If it were Go Fish, you wouldn't worry about that. But money gets involved, and if it's an open game and it's a card room, or it's serious, it's high stakes, people care about winning, people get upset when they don't win. None of that happens at Poker 2.0. And everybody if you talk to any person who has ever been to one of our events, what's it like? They'll say it's so much fun. And in fact, we have a lot of folks, we're the only event they go to. They're busy. Founders and investors are very busy. Finding an excuse to go out and connect it's hard to make time for that, because normally it's a big room, it's noisy, there might be 100 or 200 people there, and is it 10% are founders and investors? The rest are service providers and small businesses and recruiters and people looking for a job or whatever it is. It's hard to connect in an intimate way like that at most networking events. So we have investors who plan their travel schedule to make sure that they're either going to be in town for our event, or when they go to another city, and this is more founders will say, oh, I'm going to be in San Francisco, so when is the San Francisco game? And I'll plan my trip around that time so they can meet some more founders and investors in San Francisco, right? Why not? But the truth about poker is it's just a game. It's a game of skill. It's not about luck. There's a reason that the best players often end up at the final table, and it comes down to the fact that it is skill. And yes, you can get lucky, and luck's part of everything. I think the percentage of luck in poker is analogous to the amount of luck that is in startups. Yes, there's luck. Yes, you hope you get luck. If you get luck, it's better. You want to get luck. But if you play it foolishly, the luck won't help you. And the reality is that if you care about anything at all, you will work at it. And if you work at poker, and this work's probably the wrong word, you play it, you pay attention. It's always fun. Nothing changed about that. But just learn as you go. Like, watch how things work and try to get better. You will find yourself having more fun, getting better, and eventually ending up in the money, right? One of my favorite stories, if you know Ari Yu, a good friend of mine, and she didn't play poker, but she, many, many years ago decided she was going to give this thing a try, and she came out. She was a founder at the time, and she learned how to play and played and loved it and kept coming and kept coming and kept getting better and better. And, she ended up writing one of those many, many blog posts about the lessons I learned about startups by playing poker. And she eventually got to a place where she won first place in one of the tournaments. So she went from 0 to first place. It was it was a few years. But in the meantime, she built all these relationships, had this great time with other founders and investors. And in the end, she got better at it, and she learned from it. And I encourage you to look up her article. I think it's the 9 lessons that she learned from poker, of which there are 100. and it's interesting to watch how different people learn different things from poker. But none of them, I've never read an article that said how I ended up wasting time playing poker with other founders and investors. That article does not exist. The biggest challenge, I think, for poker is just getting people to understand how approachable it is, and for us, how friendly it is, and how easy it is to come and to get involved. And if I have a bone to pick, it's with the notion that it's not for women. Poker, oh, it's a poker thing. That's a guy thing. That's not very inclusive to play poker, and I disagree. I know reputationally it's a challenge, but I'm telling you, and all the other women who play in our poker events will all tell you the same thing. It is awesome, and by the way, women are awesome at it. There is no difference at all. You in fact, women sometimes have a material advantage at the table because they're underestimated. Ever heard that happen in the startup world? And so, if I could accomplish anything, it would be to help women understand that poker is just a game. Come out and play a game, and meet other founders and investors, and build these relationships with the people who can help you the most. And by the way, while you're doing it, you'll be exercising this certain kind of decision making and critical thinking that I can attest. As I said in the description of this broadcast, I have played poker with more venture scale founders and investors than anyone else on planet Earth. And I played many times with many founders and investors who have played over and over and over again. And I have seen them develop this critical thinking and to get better at it. Meanwhile, while I'm talking to them about other things, I'm seeing that they're thinking about their startups in a more rational, higher quality decision-making way. And so, it's not just fun game. It's not just about building relationships. There is also this power of poker to improve a certain kind of decision-making. And it's very rewarding to me when a founder or investor comes out. I was in this meeting with this founder and investor, and I was just thinking about negotiating this and how I should think about this and that. And it came. They tell me, I'm not putting anything on them. They tell me, I was thinking about poker, and I was thinking, how would I do that in poker? And this is how I would do that in poker, and that's the way I did it there, and it worked. So it's super, super valuable and fun in all these different ways. The natural sort of chit chat that happens, at poker has this really interesting connection to tech founders especially. It's not a secret that a lot of us are not natural networkers, but if you give someone a simple thing, and this goes for everybody, whether you're a good networker or not, give someone a simple thing to do, and give them enough time to get comfortable and to participate in a conversation if they want to, that has this really interesting leveling effect that I don't care who you are, whether you're a founder or investor, you're an angel investor, or a GP of a $500 million fund, or two gals in a garage, or an exited unicorn founder, everybody is equal at the table. The only thing that distinguishes you is your experience and your ability to play the game. And if you introduce too much, and this is why we keep it low stakes, if you introduce too much money, then it gets cattywampus, right? If you are the GP of a $500 million fund, you probably don't care if you lose that $10. You'll rebuy and rebuy, and it doesn't matter to you. That money is pennies to you. If you're two gals in a garage, you might feel a little bit different about, losing a little bit of money in this game. So we keep the stakes super, super low, so that no matter what your wealth level is, you're equal. You get to play at the same level, and it's fun to see founders playing against investors and getting an edge where they don't have an edge anywhere else, right? And by the way, many of them couldn't pay enough to get a coffee meeting with some of these investors, yet they get to sit at the table and trash talk with them for a few hours and really get to know them. And that leads to so many good things. I can't, it's innumerable, mostly because I don't even know how many times it happens. But almost every time when I see a Startup Haven member in the wild somewhere at another event or out in the and doing whatever, uh, there's almost always a story. Bob, I never told you this, but we got our first investor because I was sitting next to this investor and found out what we're doing. And they want to have a coffee meeting, and they ended up investing. Right? Co-founders get found. It's no secret. Startups are hard. They fail a lot, and when they fail, it's take a breather maybe, but you're going to be ready to get back in your next thing. And there's a lot of terrific founders who meet other founders who are looking for the next thing, and it's a good fit, and they end up teaming up. And even if your thing doesn't fail, there's like one story. There's so many. One story, a founder, successful founder, sold his company, became an investor, met this other founder who was working on a company. That founder exited his company. They got together and they started a fund together. Then they went on to shift from investing to becoming founders again, and now they're co-founders, and the company's doing very, very well. And all of that happened through the relationships that were built around a poker table. So the stories are certainly anecdotal, but they are prolific. There are so many of them. And if you're watching this and you're a Startup Haven member, and you haven't told me about one of the things that happened to you, I hope you will. Like, nothing makes me happier than to hear from a Startup Haven member who had something remarkable happen at an event. And I have no way to know how many times it happens. I know it happens at every single event, multiple times. So if you have any of those stories, please share them with me. I really, really appreciate that. So that's the story. That's why Startup Haven has been trying to get founders and investors together to play poker for all of these years. Honestly, if it were possible to bring folks together around Scrabble or Go Fish or chess or Settlers of Catan or whatever, I would do that, because none of those games have the baggage, the negative reputation that poker does. But I'm here to tell you that reputation is unwarranted. Yes, if you go to the wrong place with the wrong people and you play in that poker game, you might regret it. But Startup Haven plays a different kind of poker. In fact, this is kind of meaningless now, right? Back in the day, imagine 2006, like that was a long time ago. Back then, poker 2.0 meant something. AI means something right now, right? 2.0 meant something back then. Web 3.0 meant something a minute ago. Back then, I wanted to distinguish it from all the other poker games that happen in the startup world. And there are a bunch. Lots of investors, lots of bankers and lawyers host games, lots of founders host, and they're fun, right? And they're different for different hosts. Many of them are relatively high stakes. There's a little bit at stake when you sit down at the table, and sometimes there's a lot at stake when you sit down at the table. And I get that. I play in a few of those myself, and they're fun. But they're not what we do. What we do is sort of engineered the way we structure the game so that everybody's downside is limited. It's $10, and the experience, the fun that you have, and the relationships that you build, regardless of whether or not you believe me that decision making in startups and poker is similar. Regardless of that, it's still one of the most fun events you'll ever go to if you're a founder investor. So that's the story of poker. That's why I do it. 19 years, it's been a passion project. That network that grew out of that is such a valuable part of my life, and it's now why I was able to launch the accelerator that we have at Startup Haven that helps teach founders this way of thinking about their startup. The Startup Haven Venture Fund invests with that principle in mind, finding founders and companies who that probabilistic, rational way to think about getting to the next milestone, where you need to be, like that's what drives Startup Haven Ventures, the fund and the accelerator. I'm so grateful to Poker. Thank you, Poker. So that's all I've got. Thank you guys for tuning in if you did. And if you're a founder investor and you want to connect with other founders and investors, we don't just play poker. We do other things too. In addition to the venture fund and the accelerator, we also have other ways to connect founders and investors together so that you can help each other. And if you want to join, go to startuphaven.com. There's an application link there. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. We do have a vetting process. Everyone who joins Startup Haven, when you join Startup Haven, you have to be working full time on a venture scalable company with some elements of progress, traction, commercialization. You have to have done something. You can't quit your job at Meta and say, I'm a founder, let me in. Investors, if you're actively seeking your next startup investment, we'd love to have you join as well. Underlying all of this is the notion that if you join, you're going to help if you can. And being willing to help other founders is the cornerstone of why we do all of this. Bringing those folks together in the right environments and with the right mechanisms to help them find each other and help each other. If you're interested, reach out or apply at startuphaven.com. Thank you guys very much.